This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and fowlibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists, as well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers. Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast. It's Office Hours, featuring myself, DMO73, and I am joined, as always, by Mike Rance.
Why do you sound so much more like sensual today, Jeremy? I feel like you're just like really leaning into that.
I'm feeling it. And Paul Reisman.
Hello. I want you to imagine a bearded eagle flying toward you, flying onto your head, and slowly preening your hair.
Everyone, just for context, we were looking at Battle Spirit Saga cards, and I was making fun of all the names. It was really fun.
Yeah, he was going nuts. This will
Except
not be a
the penguin is. The penguin was objectively the best card. This
will not be a Battle Spirit Saga podcast. We will not be getting into that game.
The only cards are the best cards.
So before we get started, I do want to say thank you all so much for being here. If you like what we're doing and you want to consider supporting the channel, you can check the link in the description to either go to Odyssey Games or any of our other sponsors and pick up product for them. But also you can click that join button down below. Get access to all kinds of cool things like the emotes and other kinds of awesome stuff, including free merch or the ability to have your decks featured on the channel, everything else like that. But in general, we just like to have you here, so we're glad to have you here. Also, just as a note, before we get started, we do have the April 1st Discord exhibition tournament, the first of hopefully many, that we will be hosting over on the Ruler School server. It'll be on April 1st and 2nd. Top 8 players, there's information in the description to go sign up. It's $15 to go sign up. You get 5 prize wall points to the FowFest, the next FowFest that you attend. Like, you just get 5 points for showing up for that. It is also serving as a fundraiser for FowFest, so the only prizing for the event is 8 of these wonderful custom, officially permission given by the company, never going to be printed again outside of this event, Moonchild Ruler School playmats. There will be 8 of these produced, a champion one, 7 top 8 ones, and then that's it. This will be only printed one time for this exact event, so be sure to sign up. The hope is that we'll have success with this and then can maybe talk to the company about doing future ones with other cool playmat designs moving forward, so please sign up so we can kind of garner some support that way. Okay, so that's the usual stuff out of the way. Hey guys, it was we kind of got some cool announcements this week. It's kind of a cool news week.
I love a news week.
Post GP, cool results, conversation talking about the GP results, getting caught up on deck profiles, all that stuff. But we got some cool news from the company this week, and I'd like to chat about it. So Paul needs an ASMR.
Yeah, I guess we can do that.
Make an ASMR. Is this Ruler School 2? Is for Paul's ASMR channel. Joe Ramirez, good to see you in the chat, buddy. So the first big announcement.
I'm Mike Rance.
Yeah, that's you. The first big announcement was this idea of the Memoria collection. So this was clearly the company following up with the success of being able to implement the contract reprint packs in set 3, that they are deciding to use that as a modus to get additional cool bonus cards into every single box, which is a cool idea. So we have Memoria Collection 1 for Crimson Moon Battleground. Memoria Collection 1, meaning that there will be more, obviously, most likely. And so every box of Crimson Moon's Battleground is going to have a pack of 5 of these promos randomly. And it's not guaranteed one of this plus 4, it's just 5 random. And the set is Grim the Fairy Tale Prince, Heavenly Flash, Pierre the Godspeed Archer, Awakening of the Undead Lord, Allosaurus Minion of Lapis, Cage of Mother Goose, Cthulhu the Living Flame, Dreams of Wonderland, Killing Stone, Wanderer in the Nightmare Land, and then the 5 GP artworks of the duets. So, this is like mid to back half of Alice Origins into Saga Cluster, plus some GP kind of era and some Wanderer era promos. So, without talking about the specific promo choices, what are your guys' thoughts, Paul and Mike, about the idea of using this as a method to try to get, reprints or promo artworks into new players' hands?
Good.
You heard it here first.
But why, Mike? Why good?
Because okay, so I'm gonna lay down the gauntlet here. Obviously, everybody knows that even when you're playing Wanderer, new cards are always going to be better because of natural game progression and learning new things about the game. However, there's a lot of really fun cards in Wanderer. Format's very fun to play casually, and most players can't get the casual stuff. So having new ways to kind of break into that avenue, it's going to be a nice little something. So, in short words, good.
Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that because I know one of the biggest concerns that new players have is like, how do I get good generic cards, right?
Oh, I thought you were just going to say, how do I
and so
get good?
Well, that too. Like, how do I get good generic cards so I can be better at the game, right? That's like one of the main concerns that I hear from new players, right? Because one of the main things they say is, I just don't have a knowledge of older cards, right? And the best part about so many of the promos that have been coming out in the last few years have been like, they're good generic staple cards that provide a lot of utility. Like Pierre is a fantastic one drop like white resonator. Like,
Yeah.
like I
Oh,
don't
you
know what
want-
else.
actually-
like, he's even seeing play right now, right?
Yeah, but the big thing about Pierre is that you Pierre because your bladder's empty.
Correct.
Thank you, Mike Ritz.
Hence why it's yellow.
Hey!
Hey.
I'm gonna dissociate for a minute.
We broke Jeremy. Nice.
Editions. It's a 4/4 flyer with swiftness. I mean, it's a really aggressive card, which I think appeals to newer players because they just want to be able to swing with their stuff. And so like, if you're like, okay, you're a new player, if you want to get into the game, here's a box. Also, you're gonna get some really cool promos in it because there's a Memoria pack. And there's probably going to be more. I mean, that would lock me in more as a new player than anything.
Yeah. To me, like, regardless of the promos itself, it's this idea, and I'll get into my kind of thoughts about this specific choice of promos for the very beginning of it, because they're not all... Rustin did a great job of, in his video, talking about feeling very whelmed by these choice of promos, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And I think I can kind of agree, as someone who has all of these promo artworks already, to have this pack be printed, I am very whelmed by what they've chosen. But the idea of you're buying a new box, but also in this new box, we're going to give you a taste of what old cards looked like for you to goof around with and kind of see if you can kind of find a slot for it. I think is a cool way to kind of bridge the gap, in a way that also, like, people don't have... This hits a couple things. People might not have had locals during the time when Alice Origins promos were being distributed, right?
Wouldn't surprise me considering it was DBV into Alice Origin.
Yeah. So like the Alice Origins promos might not have been readily accessible, so that's what we're hitting. The Alice Origin promos weren't included in the Memoria reprint set, or in the memorials, right? They weren't part of that because they came out after the memorials were printed. So there's that. And also just in general, like, they're cool pieces of like FAU's history to kind of include, and it's just literally free bonus on top of what your art. Like, it's not taking a pack out of the pack. It's just like, oh, I bought a box and I get these cool other 5 things, right? It's just a nice little, and I'm going to get a box topper, right? It's just like more like just bonus to the box, which I think is cool. To get into the
one time, just as a
promos...
goof, as like a goof, I Spy should make a box topper and just make it a life point counter.
Stop. Don't put that into the universe. The other thing
is the biggest one.
The other thing is, some of these promos are ones that were GP exclusive, right? Like participation,
Oh,
like
yeah, that's
duets were
right.
the participation in GPs, and there are legitimately people who play this game and they purely just play it with friends or kitchen table, and they have no interest in joining GPs. They have no interest in the competitive grind, and they also don't want to shell out $12 to $15 for a GP entry promo, which is totally fair, right? And so this is a very cool way to also speak to those players of saying like, look, you might get it later, but like you can still have these cool artwork cards, because the difference between the duets, the GP promo duets, and the non-GP promo duets is astounding in terms of like the art. Like they're gorgeous. Like I love the GP duets, right? And so this sets up there's a couple of things that come from that in terms of the precedent that sets, right? Because you know what else was a GP promo? Dark Alice.
Dark Alice.
You know what else was a GP promo? Garion. You know what else was a GP promo?
Mikage
Setting the
Rhea.
Stage. You know what else was a GP promo? Mikage Rhea. You know what? Like these are things that were entry GP promo. Sylvia.
Sole Envoy
Like,
of Light.
Well, he was also Memorial, pretty sure. But anyway, but like it creates a through line that kind of speaks to this idea of a big part of I Spy's Fow's history is like once the print has happened, the print won't happen again. And so this memorial pack is something that is a small way for them to kind of constantly be having a little bit of a drip of promos have new life again. Promos will be released again. Promos will come around again. And we don't know which ones they are. And it's not guaranteed, right? There is still an element of you got to buy and you got to produce and everything else. So it's not like they're dirt cheap. They're going to print them into the ground. But the fact that it exists is just another cool thing to be able to talk about, right? And put into the space. Yeah, players who don't have a locals might not get those promos, right? They just have ways to be able to do that for sure.
Right. It's just a creative way to getting around some of like what folks have been concerned about, right? Like, how do I get these good cards? How do I get promos to like build my collection?
Right.
If I don't
without
have
even
a locals.
necessarily having to design a whole nother product. Don't get me wrong, I still think a Wanderer reprint set that they've kind of talked about, I hope that this isn't replacing it, because that's helpful to happen, right? But we haven't heard anything about it from a while. But if this is still something that's being put into the world as a supplement to eventually this Wanderer reprint set, whenever it happens, like this is still a very good stopgap, right? Like the method, the through line that they've created for this opportunity is a very good stopgap of way to address that without having to design a whole nother product. Because I think in terms of a printing organization, I can't imagine something that's more expensive than designing a whole nother product for a whole nother print run, as opposed to inserting something into an already created print run, right?
Yeah.
Like product design. So,
well, and if they still go with like the formatting conventions that they did for the other memorials, some of the cards actually look better with that new, like that formatting background that sort of sets them apart as memorials compared to other stuff. So like, gosh, I mean, how many darkness cards and how many of the red promos that we had just look better with that red formatting in the background? It was just so good.
Teacher Mook, Dark Alice Rabbit Princess. Yeah, she was a GP promo this past season. She was a GP participation.
Question for you, Teacher Mook. Have you played during the formats the Dark Alice Rabbit Princess was legit? Because that's like, if not, you are in for a rude awakening when it comes to how powerful one drops can be when you look at her.
I mean, she's good now.
Oh, she's real good now. Yeah.
She got better. Did you know that she became a one-drop draw for?
Oh, crazy. Wow.
She became a one-drop draw for cards?
That's an interesting question, Reginald. What are your thoughts on a product like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Tins where you reprint a bunch of staples? Problem is, we don't really have like staples per se.
I mean, we
definitely
do, but like, I don't know.
That's kind of what we're speaking of into the idea of like a Wanderer reprint set. I think
that could be. Yeah,
this is like a full Wanderer, like a Wanderer Welcome to Wanderer 101 like box or whatever. That like every like 2 to 3 years releasing a product like that could be really helpful. I think in the meantime, doing packs like this is a good way to kind of hit that same kind of vibe, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to speak specifically to these promos.
Speak, Jeremy.
Someone made a post. I think it was Ryan Lilly, who's King Pearlshine, one of our guest lecturers.
Where's the king?
He was like, "Oh, 2 of these are playable," and I went, "Hold up, let's talk about this." This set has Aristella, whose whole gimmick is tagging with a Grim Cluster ruler. And very clearly, he looks a lot visually connected to Fairy Tales and Grim. What is one of the promos in this pack? The original Grim ruler. Tell me that's not a deliberate choice.
Please tell me,
right?
please tell me it's the E-Punk art. Please tell me it's E-Punk.
If it's the E-Punk, I don't think so. It's probably the artwork from the banner, which is the actual Wanderer Link one.
But that's so boring.
They'd have to talk to E-Punk again.
They should.
And
E-Punk's rad.
So anyway, I agree, he's rad. So that's one of the 15 that is very clearly linked to the intention of the set, right? So you can just bam, I have a Grim that I can partner with Aristella. I'm ready to go. Heavenly Flash, sure. Not really playable, but it's a cool artwork. Pierre, we've already talked about. Pierre's a great 1-drop even now. It's a great card to get into people's hands. Awakening of the Undead Lord, sure. I guess in competitive it's not going to do anything, but it's not a bad card to play casually. We have it in the cube. It's fine. Allosaurus, the minion of Lapis. Bruh, have you ever drawn 4 off of a Killua? I use a single copy of Allosaurus, minion of Lapis in my current Killua build just to be able to be oops, draw 4 cards. It has applications. It's not everywhere, but it has applications. Cage of Mother Goose. That shit has seen play for the past year and a half.
Oops, Fairy Tales are good. Time to tap a thing and
what if we had something. Mastery Fairy Tale before Mastery was a thing, right? Cage of Mother Goose is good. Cthulhu, also a great card. Also a great reprint. We saw Incarnate become a thing with War. The War mechanic is very driven towards the idea of incarnation, right? With how much she just generates tokens. Imagine this. I'm going to swing and then I'm going to sack that token or sack whatever I swung with now that it has War to make 3 tokens. I'm going to swing with each of those tokens. Then I'm going to sack one of those tokens to make a Cthulhu. I spent 0 will and I put 5 bodies up.
Cthulhu.
Right? Cthulhu's a cool card, for sure. Dreams of Wonderland? Sure. Same thing with Heavenly Flash. You got
Dreams of Wonderland's the one that
bounce. It checks the top card of your deck for evens or odds.
Even or odds? Yeah, okay, sure. Whatever, fine.
Killing Stone.
I used to play Even Grim.
We have better green Blackstones to not be a shock, so sure. But it's an iconic promo, so fine.
Mm-hmm.
Wanderer and Nightmare Land, sure. So we're up to 4 out of these 15 that I can be oh yeah, clearly there's no reason. These are just cards that they included. And then
be added into your cubes.
And the Duet of Lights, or the duets. Now, are the duets all good? I would argue that Duet of Light and Duet of Darkness are the only ones that are remotely competitively playable. But are they very cool artworks that have a reason to be in this pack because people couldn't play in GPs? Correct. Are they fun to goof around with in a casual environment? Correct. Especially since we have triple rulers that you can try to get all 3 modes off of them with. These are very cool. So I would argue that about 75% of this makeup of this first pack of 15 is relevant enough to include as a bonus pack inside of a box, right? And so to me, that's great. I think they did a good job with these. And I think they set themselves up for future Memorial packs being very cool. So, yeah, there you go. Get a classic story Vingolf set, 1 deck Wizard of Oz, 1 deck Alice. So that's just looking at the first clusters of Forza Will. We have a Yellow Brick Road deck. We have
I like it.
Wizard of Oz, or we have Wonderland. We have the Knights of the Round Table with Faria and stuff. Those are kinds of things.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
Essentially, that's kind of what we were talking about either last week or the week before about how you can develop new decks that include older support, but then take that older support and introduces new card stuff that helps you to do more of what that deck wanted to do in the past.
Yeah.
Like
So I'm
retrains.
looking forward to the most. That's the one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most with Aristella, is because it's not only that you can tag Aristella with an older ruler, but that you can tag an older ruler with a second ruler. So like you can just give that utility that comes with having a second ruler to an OG Grim ruler, right? And so like think about the application there, right? So you can kind of play it both ways. So I think that's a cool kind of design perspective. So that's my thoughts about the PR pack. I think it opens up a lot of stuff for the future, with other things that they can decide to do, with other promos that they could decide to pick. And very, like I said, very clearly they're opening it up to the idea of being able to do
Bless you.
GP promos. So
Guys, sneezed so hard he created new GPs.
just GPs exploded. So yeah, that's the news we have for there. The second thing that was the news is literally came out today.
Wait, Jeremy, I need to get more wine. Hold that thought for a second.
Okay, I'm holding the thought.
Cool.
Just let your thoughts go.
No, I'm not gonna let that. I told him I'd hold the thought. Why would you want me to let it?
Just let your thoughts. Hold them and then let them go. Like drawing a card from your deck. Recover all of your cards. And then call a stone for your turn.
My cards are over there. I
And
can't.
when you do,
I built a really fun deck today using Beatrice and Estema.
yeah, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
My goal is to try to. I'm channeling Rustin with this deck. So Rustin, channeling you, my guy. The goal of the deck is to try to, as fast as possible, resolve both End of the Undefeated Legend and Inferno in the same turn. So yeah, like resolve End of the Undefeated Legend, go down to 0 cards, God's Art Astema, cast Inferno, force my opponent down to 0 cards, and then at the end of the turn draw 4 cards. Like that's the goal of that deck. No lab. I'm not playing lab in it.
Lab Beatrice.
All right. But let's
I have a
talk about
different
Lab
lab deck.
Beatrice, though. I'm here for it.
Definitely gonna need to Eris says definitely needs to see some proper reprints though. Feels bad for new players not having all of Raya Cluster green staples needed for this format.
The
Raya
Lorites?
Cluster green staples be Lorites and Ferrer spells, which have been promos.
Lorites. Just Lorites.
But we also have
Why is
Lorite at
my-
home, which is Killua. The Killua spell is kind of like Lorite at home, and promo Lorites exist. I can't think of any other green cards from Raya Cluster outside of Ferrers and Lorites that are the cards that we're looking for there, and they're both promos, which means that they could very potentially be included in these in the future.
Real quick,
Yeah,
boys.
I mean, I think in general, like I'm glad we get promos and stuff, but again, like
Little Maria plus okay.
just print that card into the ground. Like Lorite will always be a good card to have.
Sure.
My noise canceling
Eris
just turned off, and I heard my own voice, and it sucks.
Eris, ship me
Continue.
your deck list, because if you have a better deck list than mine, I'd be interested to see it, and I would love to feature it on the channel. So, because the one that I built in like 20 minutes. So if you have a better idea, I'm all ears.
No, the 20-minute decks are the best decks.
Okay, so the second news that we got today, they literally dropped today, is the next promos, which means that these are the April promos, which means that they are going to be included as entry for the April GP. Just so everyone is very clear on that. And it is these beautiful things, which is Athenia, DBV Athenia, and Dark Charlotte Alternative. What Dark Charlotte is the Ruler League, and then Athenia DBV is the Wanderer League. These cards are gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. And Athenia is an absolutely solid Wanderer reprint to put into the environment. Like, just very, very cool to see this card. You know, it came off the ban list 2 ban lists ago. Is it 2 ban lists or was it 3 ban lists?
One ban list ago, I'm pretty sure. Was it the last ban
It
list?
didn't just come off the ban list. It came off 2 ban lists ago.
Yeah, I want to say I think it was 2. That makes sense.
But now we have a promo version of it, and the artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. Very cool to see. So, yeah, I think in general that's just again, I think that there's something to be said about a card that is so clearly seeing Wanderer play and is a card that is cool to bring back into the Wanderer environment, is being noticed and included in the like card pool of potential options for promos. I just think it shows that like iSpy is very clearly paying attention. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Good artwork. I love Dancing Skull Lady.
I would say I still don't know what this card is in reference to because Athenia is not a thing. It's not a character, but I'm all in. Like I think she's especially like with all of the black green decks that we have in the format right now, she's very solid in terms of just a good card.
Well, Paul, remember the Athenia isn't actually the girl in the wedding dress, the Skelly Man.
Athenia's the Skelly. Oh, see, that makes so much sense.
It
He's
actually-
the skull.
It's the skull.
The skull was Athenia the whole time.
The skull.
Time.
Oh my god, he was the skull the
You
whole
just got your playset
time.
of Uber Athenia and they come out with these. No, you never feel bad for getting the Uber Athenias. They are dope.
I can't even
They are sick.
tell my full art
Unless you don't like
Athenias. It's
Ubers,
fine.
but that's just me.
I want everything
Yes.
chrome.
Just absolute chrome. Witness me.
Platinum promos.
Unbanned Sigurd Altar next. Stop.
Don't.
Stop.
I was
Take
almost
your
fucking
break.
choked. Oh my god.
Take Rhea plus Final Stance. Enjoy that, but don't bring me Sigurd Altar back.
Oh my god, Rustin, he was number 1. Oh man, she's dancing with Smitty Worker and Jensen.
This is the
Let me search
beauty
Inst-
of the internet.
Let me
We
search
just connect.
Institute off of Sigurd. No, stop. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Now that you say that, yeah, I want Sigurd back.
Stop. Get out.
Stop.
Never allowed to make another video for the channel ever again. If you
Oh
think
my
that's acceptable
god.
behavior.
Schrodinger.
We're not friends anymore.
Sure, you can unban Sigurd. Paul's banned.
Yeah. Paul's combination band.
Ban Paul.
Paul's combination band with Sigurd. No, you know what? Eris' combination band with Sigurd. Fuck you, Eris. We're
Yeah,
done.
and we've already said that. I mean, in the we've already said that the official ruler school
Wait a minute.
combination ban list is that Minhwa can't play Ragnarok. So like, clearly the next step is we unban Sigurd, and then we say that Eris can't play Sigurd. It's fine. We're
Wait,
combination
hold
banning
on.
specifically
Wait,
Eris for Sigurd. That makes
whoa.
sense.
The game's cowardly enough to make combination ban lists, but leave Sigurd banned when they could just ban Sigurd Alter and Sigurd Schrodinger. And just
Stop.
let Sigurd have all the fun stuff. Come on, man. I mean, really?
Action Jackson, just make black green more powerful. Honestly, blue needs some love. I'm gonna say this.
Yes.
The best color against black green is blue, and it's not close.
Yeah.
You know the
It's-
best like
it's
FTK deck is a blue
legitimately-
deck, right?
It's legitimately not close. Like the best color, like the black, blue, white Aristella list that I was playing in the event, was primarily blue, and pretty much every black green deck I faced against, I was like 80% favored because of all the blue cards. Like blue is the counterpoint to black green, so you're already in a good spot.
Counterpoint. Mono aggro.
Oh, I can already Eris. I can already combo ban myself from good decks, Mike. Don't worry. That's fair. That's fair, Eris. At least you accept yourself. We
I'm
support
still
you.
saying Sigurd could just be combo banned with Schrodinger and Alter and nothing would happen. Just saying.
No. I don't think you realize how good Magic Stone Research Institute is as a card.
Getting it off
Getting
of
it
Sigurd?
The best card in
Hi.
the game.
Hello. I'm gonna pay two will I'm going to reanimate the Sigurd from the grave. I'm going to get Institute. I'm going to sack one of those stones that I used to cast Sigurd and get a new stone into play tapped, and then give Sigurd and everything else I own a permanent at least +4/+4 buff, and the ability to remove your graveyard from the game at instant speed. So if you have a Sigurd in graveyard but haven't cast it yet, you just never get to cast another Sigurd. Enjoy yourself. Like, no,
Fair.
no, stop.
It's unfair right now. I think that's okay.
Blue is the floodgate color.
It's
Yeah, you're not wrong.
fine.
Blue is definitely the floodgate color. Blue just needs some better closers. That's the biggest weakness right now for blue, is that its closers just aren't great.
Mm-hmm.
If Sigurd searched 1-drop editions, would he be broken?
Like if he could specifically only grab a darkness edition of 2
One
drop
cost.
or 1 drop or less.
Yeah.
I think that'd probably be fine.
That's it. Functional errata. That's the only way to save the game with Sigurd in it.
The game doesn't even need to be saved,
I know.
Mike. Like the game's in a great spot right now.
This game has been careening toward death for 10 years.
I forgot about that.
Hasn't
Honestly,
died yet.
in terms of like the state of the meta itself, this game is the furthest it's been from death for like 4 years. Like
That's
in terms of
You're
like
right.
healthy, diverse, enjoyable meta. It's like the
It's definitely
furthest
more
away
of a
that it's
Sigurd
been.
on the field than it is a Sigurd in the grave. I agree.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm just okay that Sherry finally got unbanned. Babatunde, I need you to build me a Sherry list so I can build it to record it on the channel. Better yet, come to Odyssey Games one of
Just
these weeks
remember-
and just play Sherry for me so I can record it for the channel. Because
Just
I gotta
remember-
get that. I gotta get
Paul.
that recorded at some point.
A Sigurd in the hand is worth 2 in the grave.
I think you mean
That's
like
not
a
true.
single. I think you mean a Sigurd in the grave is worth 2 in the hand, because 2 in the hand are terrible, and you'd rather have 1 in the grave.
No, you want 2. Yeah, no, it's 1 in the hand is better than 2. This analogy fell off way harder than.
But you don't want
Sigurd
Sigurd in your
Hand
hand.
is always bad.
A Sigurd in the hand is always bad.
Unless you hit Dark Alice, and then we go back to the thing we we're talking to Teacher Mook about. That's it. We've
Faurecia.
continuity. Oh, Faurecia.
Teacher Mook, I'm so glad you're having a great time with Foul. That's awesome to see. We love to see newer people really getting in and really enjoying it, because
Yeah.
love this game. Have no desire to leave. What do you mean?
Oh my
that's
god!
hard you could pitch for Lab?
Shut up, Eris. Eris, shut the fuck up. Oh my god.
Eris is on point. Eris is on point.
Sounds
Oh my
correct.
god, that's
I
the
love it.
that's
I will
the
say-
worst.
I will say the
thing.
feature match this week is a Lab deck, and it is hilarious. We did figure out a Lab deck that is very enjoyable. Shout out to Logan Moses for showing us the little Lab engine with his.
Oh my god,
with his
shut
finish
up,
at
Logan.
TCG. It's also
Logan
very funny to watch that.
Logan always makes cracked shit, and nobody gives him the time of day for it. It's like
It's
that man
well,
just.
True.
It's
Holy
so
shit,
funny
dude.
to see the like top. Someone posted in our Discord server today, looking at the best-selling cards in Card Market for FAO in the last 7 days since the GP, and one of the top 5 selling cards is Seth the Arbiter.
Oh,
just like-
no!
I'm like, Logan Moses did that. Logan Moses did that to the market.
Remember that time he got
Okay,
minus?
Doug, I didn't even know. I didn't know anything about this GP. Obviously, I've been like busy and I've been traveling. That man played Seth the Arbiter in his main
Came in
board.
second place.
How many sets did he have in the main board, Jeremy?
2.
That's 2 more than he should have, but 1 more than.
Listen
he
to this,
probably-
Mike. Listen to this interaction, Mike. Okay.
Go ahead.
If I ever have Seth the Arbiter and Lab on field at the same time, you never get a hand again for the rest of the game. Because I discard a
Thank
card at
you.
instant speed using Lab, and then you discard a card, and then Seth triggers, and I draw a card. Correct. Correct. You just don't get a
That's how
hand
that
for the rest
works.
of the game. Did it work in the
I-
finals on stream? No. Did it work everywhere
I'm-
else? Yeah.
I used to meme on Seth. That card's so cool, but it used to be a meme. Why is it getting GP? Why do we let this happen? Why do we let Logan get away with things that he gets away with?
Well, I will say also the joke of the GP is that, so let's talk about this. So the GP was 6 rounds and then the top 8. So 9 rounds total. Would you like to know how many rounds total Logan played in that entire event?
5.
Correct.
How did I guess that? Wait, why? Wait, what?
He played 4 rounds of Swiss and finals. Because his top 8 opponent scooped to him because they already had an invite and Logan needed an invite. His top 4 opponent scooped to him because Logan needed an invite and he already had an invite. And 2 of his players that he played against in his Swiss scooped to him because they wanted to make sure he got to top 8. This man played 5 rounds of a 9-round event and made it to second place. That does not detract from Logan's success, though. It was a very cool deck, and Logan played very well and earned all of his wins.
If he played every game,
Just
it would have
saying,
come out the same.
That's kind of
like
that's
that
kind
man.
of just a meme.
That man can pilot jank to a pearl shine.
Yeah, so still kudos to Logan Moses and congrats to him for finally earning his invite to Worlds. Well deserved. He's put in the work for a long time, so well deserved.
Part of the Red
cool
Seas
cards.
to get his way to Japan.
Playing some cool cards.
The
Flower Player Blaze is just too nice.
New rule. If you get a card banned, you get to go to Worlds.
Mike, we get to go to Worlds. Wait a
We
minute.
did.
We already get to go to Worlds.
I could have gone to Worlds in 2018 when I showed Jeff Finnegan the Gretel combos and got
You were already
Gretel
at
banned.
Worlds.
I was, so I got invited back.
There you go, for sure. I am excited to stream Worlds again. Ugh, I've missed being in Japan on stream.
I haven't
Worlds.
played Force Will in like 2 years, so I'm gonna relearn really quick.
We're gonna have a camp at my house. I'm gonna invite all of the foul players who have, like, because of life and everything else, not been able to play for the past 2 years, but have a Worlds invite to, like, come to my house for 2 weeks and just run like a foul boot camp.
When
Like,
I
time to relearn,
when I
boys.
got my invite, I was still living with my parents, dude.
As
This
soon as
is
it was
insane.
confirmed his invite was getting passed to him, I told him he was going to get blasted by Derek. We did kind of watch that happen in the finals.
It was
was
Derek
not close.
playing.
Hyde. He was playing Hyde. It was a very cool
Yeah.
list, and nobody was respecting Hyde in that tournament. 0 respect for Hyde in those sideboards. Anywhere.
How do you hate on Hyde?
Don't cheat.
That's pretty good.
It's really good.
That's really
against Hyde.
good.
It's really good against Hyde.
Hey,
Just don't cheat.
no.
Yeah, Damascus Moon is also very good against them, so that Ega doesn't give their stuff quick cast. Or if you're Order Alice, you like slam a Linosfaria, and you're just like, no quick cast shit for you.
Hey, Federico Zappini. Anyway, continue on.
Don't we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it.
We don't use
what
that
was-
word here.
What was the context of it? There's no context to it. It's fine. We weren't talking about a card. Anyway, continue.
Shackles of Ice is also pretty good against her. Yeah,
Shackles
because
is
she
really
can't-
strong.
Can't say
Shackles is a
it
pretty good
stops
strong.
Hyde. It's not as good as against Pink Spider, but it's good against Hyde for sure. But yeah, there's
Hide
there's
from
cool
that.
stuff there. Hide to
Shackles-
hide from that guy. He's scary. Hide to
Ha
hide
ha.
from that guy. He's scary. Hey,
Ha ha. I get it. That was a
yeah,
funny
that's-
joke. Oh yeah, that's funny joke. God, no. Oh, the reference. Why did I make
Trying to
2
think
Game
about what
Grumps
other was there
reference in the
was there any
day?
other news this week? Let me look at the website real quick. Was there any other big events this week? We didn't get any.
Not really.
We didn't get any other news from any videos or anything.
What's your favorite say? What's your favorite quote from Game Corps?
Nope, we're not going down that line. Let's not. This is not a game.
I don't. What other
Grumps
news do
podcast.
we have?
Watch the Beard Bros instead.
Let's see. Oh, can we talk about? This
No.
is a big piece. It came up
Okay.
before the GP, but it's been a very interesting. The application of it is kind of interesting. I helped get Sword completely rewritten as an errata. What's that word? The errata came out before the GP though, and that's what I want to talk about. So, Sword of Progression has gone from being a card that everyone thought was terrible to a card that is being insanely sought after because of this errata. And so I'd kind of like to talk about it, just to give the impressions here. So first off, the way that Sword of Progression used to work was that the first time you cast it, if you drew a card. I'm talking about like intentions, like very clearly not the first time you cast it, it does nothing line. But the first time you cast it, it draws you a card. The second time, if you want to cancel something, you have to draw and cancel something. The third time, if you want to bounce something, you have to draw and cancel and bounce something. And the fourth time, if you want to contract, you have to draw and cancel and bounce and then contract. So like you had to target multiple things on the chase to be able to get to contract, which was not necessarily like bad, but certainly more complicated. The errata changed it to clarify that it is first time draws a card, but it no longer has to choose sequentially, which means that if you're confused, the first time you cast it, it draws a card. The second time, it draws you a card and cancels something, or draws you a card, or just cancels something. The third time you cast it, it draws a card, cancels something, bounces a thing, or just draws a card, or just cancels, or just bounces a thing, or draws a card, bounces a thing, or bounces a thing, cancels a thing. Like, or does all three of them together. The fourth time, like, it gets like exponential. It's not truly, but it gets like drastically more complicated in terms of what you can do with this card. To the point where if you also don't control a Magog when it resolves, you can't contract. But to the point where we literally saw people playing Sword of Progression with Eris's, kind of idea was you just play Sword of Progression without Magog at all because you just don't care. Like you just play it outside of Olga. You're not trying to contract. The card does so much by itself. So, Paul, what are your thoughts on this buff to Sword of Progression? Like, what do you think about like the impact that it brings to the environment?
So here's some meta commentary for everybody back at home. You know why he asked me that, right? Because Shayla has a new spell now. And I think that means Sword of Progression is Olivia's new good tool in Green Olivia. And yeah, that's what I feel. I mean, you can put it into any deck, but why would you put it in anything other than Olivia?
I will say I have it
in Veer, because Veer is the other mermaid. I agree.
I have it in Funf. I will say that I have included it in. I mean, like, it just feels like it's another. If anything, it gives like green-based decks a tool, like a flexibility tool that they haven't had for a long time. Typically green heavy base decks just like struggle super hard with like spot removal. So like something sticks and you're just like, that's unfortunate. And sure, a bouncing it back isn't necessarily great, but it's still an option, right? And it's become a card that like in the hand of a skilled player who understands when to pull the trigger and how to pull the trigger on it. It's a very good card that it's gonna distinguish like higher end competitive players than lower end in terms of how they make use of sword if they choose to use it. The way the sword feels now, it feels like they probably intended for it to be the boss of the set for Olga. Yeah, they very clearly intended for Olga to be like big bad evil guy, right? And it feels like that for sure. I mean, Olga did top 8. So like want to put sword in foul chain. Bounces a tempo move. Yep. Wow, Mike's just really going in on this sandwich discussion.
So I'm fucking hungry.
We lost him about the card, but he's just gone in.
Listen,
like,
you nixed my idea for you nixed my idea of Game Bros quotes. I'm talking sandwiches in chat right now. You can't stop me.
I can't stop you. I could mute you in chat,
but that won't stop the conversation. I've already begun spinning the wheels. You can't stop it now.
I've opened up Pandora's box, and I'm not sure.
Wait, hold on. Rustin just put in the worst take of all time. I use King Swine for my hot dogs. Okay, so if you have to cut your hot dogs up and put them sideways in a bun, That's no longer a hot dog, it's a sandwich.
Eris, Sorted Green Eyeball deck is still bad.
Shut the fuck up. Green Eyebal's great. I made that deck back in the format before Sherry was legit.
You're killing me today. You're killing me today here.
So you should probably 7 Pizza Hut. Let's go. You can't have Pizza the Hut when you play D&D.
Yeah, the sword card is very, very good. It's a very good card. I'm glad that it's readily accessible. Like it's not hard to get as a card. It's been very sought after in the span of since the GP. I'm glad I have 3 secret rares and 12 total copies of this card in my possession just to have, that I don't have to worry about it.
Definitely went onto the staples list that I have going on in.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely went onto the staples list. Mike, you gotta stop. You gotta just be in your world. Be in your world.
I will stop it after this one statement.
Okay.
Cutting King Hawaiians and turning them into a hot dog bun is some sociopath shit. Like that is like unprecedented.
I mean,
that's literally like
this man's life of deck building resolves on how can I win when I'm at 0 life. So like, makes it tracks. It tracks,
dude. He's transcended to the 4th dimension at this point. I'm living in this 2D world. It. Oh my god. That's insane. Anyway. I should try it. That's unhinged.
So, I will say, though, that the important thing, I think, regardless of the strength that sort of progression has, I think to remember is that it's also just another cancel. In the fact that, like, we have ways to mess around with cancel decks. We have ways to mess. Like, it's not something that I'm suddenly scared of. It's just like, oh, that's a very good card. And I think that might be... There's not a ton of... not a ton of conversation time left, but maybe this is a conversation for a different day. We can have it now. Is the idea of what is the perspective in terms of cards being allowed to be good, and when does a card that's strong tip into a card that needs action taken against it? Because I have a perspective, because I know that myself, I have a very different perspective from people about like Pumpkin Witch or Dexia's advice, right? I would, or now Sword of Progression, like I would put them in the column of these are strong cards, and I think that strong cards are allowed to exist, but they're cards that for some people teeter on the edge of like ban worthy. And so I'll open that up to the chat as well, of like in your mind, like what is the defining line there of a thing that tips something from being just a strong card to something that needs action taken against it? So I'll open that up to Paul as well as Mike, you as well, with the game that you're designing. Kind of like what in your mind is like, where is that dividing line between a card that gets too good as opposed to just a strong card?
I have a really solid argument for this because I did design a card that was too strong in my game.
Sure.
There was a card that was supposed to be a difficult to get out card because it was all 7 colors of the game. So you had to have a hand of like not 10 cards, where that card was the last one. You had to have 7 different colors and 2 to pay for the generic cost of it.
Right.
And it was meant to balance it out, obviously. And the way that it went into the field, you removed from the game everything your opponent controlled, and for each card removed that way, you removed a card from their hand and a card from the top of their deck. What that ended up doing was creating something that was more of like a reanimator target to bring back. People would try to build decks around it. And once it hit the field, it was just game over at that point because you can't recover if you have no cards in your hands to play out your hand. What I ended up doing was changing it to a more symmetrical kind of feel to it, where instead of your opponent getting rid of resources when you get rid of their resources, just doubling down on it, when you got rid of the resources, you draw a card for each card you remove that way, putting you ahead, doubling up on how much you removed that way, but not letting it be too overbearing and like problematic for your opponent to deal with. So I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to, does this card do something inherently that creates an issue with player interaction? Does it do something where it'll win the game on the spot unless answered immediately, and there's not much counterplay to it? Or is it something that people are just going to be playing too much of? Too much of is the key here. Because if you create a card that literally so I'm going to preface this. This is the reason that I don't have any colorless cards in my game. I hate colorless cards because the moment you print a colorless card that's slightly above the curve or somewhere in like the range of like, oh, this is a good card, I should put this in my deck. Suddenly the floodgates open up and there's no real like identity to the card anymore. Now it's just going to be played in everything because it's good enough. So
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like that's a big thing. It's like if
No,
the
yeah.
card is just generically good enough to be played anywhere, maybe it shouldn't have been designed at all. Levitine is the best example I have for that.
Sure.
I get that.
Paul,
Like,
any thoughts?
I acknowledge that I come from two different backgrounds on I mean, I guess really three different backgrounds on ban list construction. The first one's the easiest. This is from my Kaijudo days, right? Just don't have a ban list. Like, design your cards in such a way that they're all kind of like generically decent to the point where none of them really break the game, but together they all kind of create a game state in which things are just really good for you, right? Like, you identified that's what the game designers intended, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh, it was all about, but outside of like the economics of that for the company, it was more just like this card design is so centralizing that it makes the format unfun to play, right? Anyone following the tier limit shenanigans that happened a few months ago knows exactly what I'm talking about. But in this game, what's been interesting.
Paul, do you remember even going further than that? Remember Pepe format where they had the most recent emergency ban list? Like that was the most
way before that.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. Yeah, that's the big thing. It's just like having that kind of like centralizing power, like you mentioned. It makes sense.
Yeah. What's noticeably different is this game for a long time used to be like that, but ever since the New Dawn Rises era and on, we've seen that shift in design logic sort of flow from this place of we didn't intend this card to do what it's doing, and so we want to ban it for that reason, right? So, like, for instance, our recent combo ban of like Stone of Rain and Setting the Stage, right? We did not intend for this card to always have this text with this stone, so we're combo banning it, right? I think when something like Sort of Progression starts being used outside Olga at such a rate that it just becomes untenable and it just becomes so good that it's sort of outclassing what the design team wanted it to do, then we're going to potentially see it banned. And I think that's kind of what the metric's going to be, right? It's going to be, is this card doing more than what we intended it to do? And if that's so, you can maybe see that it's going to get banned. So designer's intention versus game centralization against like good design to the point where you don't need a list, right? Those are all very different philosophies on banning cards that I've seen.
Yeah, for sure. Eris brings up a good point here, saying compare that to a card like Warhorse, where it warps the entire format around either abusing the card or building your entire deck around stopping people from abusing it. Like, I think that right now, Sword is going to get there. I don't think so. Personally, I think that Sword of Progression is just a strong card. Like, I would put it in the perspective of strong card, because the ways you interact with Sword are the ways that you already interact with cancel decks, right? Like, I can't bounce anything if I have stuff that has barrier, or if I have ways to respond to you by giving barrier, or if I have things like Setting the Stage to be able to protect my stuff from being canceled, or I play like we already have stuff that interacts with it, right? But it is also a strong card, right? It's not play Sword or play counter Sword or bust, right? I think it's just a good, strong tech. It's the same with cards like Dexia's Advice, right? There are fringe cases of people trying to absolutely abuse Dexia's Advice and are winning games, but that's not the majority of the environment, and that's not the majority of environment having to be that way either, right? Like, you don't have to be playing super specific cards that you wouldn't be playing to mess with just to be able to mess with Dexia's Advice. Like, there are things that are already existing that we're already playing that like naturally put up some walls against Dexia's Advice, right? It's a strong card, and when it resolves, it does strong things. But like, good cards are allowed to exist. I think to me the thing that really pushes it over those edges is that idea of like, I'm playing cards that I wouldn't normally play just so I can mess with this card that I am expecting to see in a lot of spaces, right? That to me is when a card starts to go from being just a strong card to being a problem. And I think that's the same thing as like Pumpkin Witch with Black Witch, right? People be like, oh, well, I think the things that you do to mess with Pumpkin Witch versus Black Witch is stuff that you're already including in your deck to deal with other things that are present in the environment, right? So that to me just feels like a strong combination that doesn't necessarily need action. Dexius advice, Sword of Progression, stuff like that. Like that to me is that same kind of idea, right? Yeah, Sword is just Garyable. You can just stop it.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably like at the same power level that Priscia was last format, right? Where it's like, this is a really powerful option, but the format has to be right for it, right? I mean, we have combo decks out there right now that are able to just be stopped by sort of progression doing tempo plays.
Or like really Angelic, Angelic Battle Barrier is another kind of card. Like I don't necessarily have to play cards to be able to answer Angelic Battle Barrier, but I might have to adjust my like strategy of what I'm playing for. But like Angelic Battle Barrier is a card that by existing is supposed to threaten the things that are kind of like on the outliers anyway, right? And so it's kind of like serving its purpose. So I wouldn't again say that like Angelic Battle Barrier is therefore too strong because of its influence there. I would say that the thing that is the Angelic Battle Barrier is doing its job as a strong card by keeping those outliers kind of where they belong in the outlier element, right? Because I play plenty of decks that play Angelic, and I play plenty of decks that don't, and both of them feel fine, right? I play decks that can get stopped by Angelic Battle Barrier, and I can find ways to play through it, and I play decks that don't care if you resolve an Angelic Battle Barrier against me, because I'm just going to have other ways to mess with the deck anyway. It's why we're seeing a resurgence of things like Garion, and it's why we're seeing, Angelic is a good example of like why we're seeing a resurgence of things like Garion. We're seeing a resurgence of things like Persephone. Persephone has certainly also gotten a lot better with the presence of the Killua spell, because it doesn't feel like you're losing as much by choosing Persephone over Lorite with the Killua spell. So like that's another thing to keep in mind too. Like there's nothing in this format, and even last format to me, that like necessarily felt like there was a card that was pushing that limit in terms of being too strong. I think the only thing maybe was like Asuka's contract because of the CR, but like that was fixed. Like the action is taken, and I think that's a big thing for me too. Is any of the times that I've seen cards or felt like cards have started to approach that line or cross that line, I feel like I Spy has picked up on that and also taken action. I feel like their thought process about where they want set design is, where they want card identity is, where they want the strength of cards to be, is very much in line with what I want as well for a healthy metagame, and I think that's really awesome to see. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Good thoughts.
No, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I like when you talk about your thoughts a lot.
You like when I talk about my thoughts?
Yeah, you should make like a podcast for it.
That's fine. 3 white dudes in a room.
3 white dudes in a room, baby. Let's go. Joe Rogan all over again. Anyway.
Yikes.
Oops. Did I say that out loud?
I said, yeah. And banworthiness has definitely also scaled with set design and card design and like this power level scale of the game now. And I think that's the other thing to kind of close here is the fact that like the evolution of card power is not inherently a bad thing. If all the cards from 7 years ago were as good in the environment now as they were 7 years ago, none of us would be playing this game because we would all be very bored. But the fact that I can find a card from Grim Cluster, I can find a couple cards from Lapis Cluster, I can find a couple cards from Alice Cluster that I can put into decks now and have them be impactful, like that to me is the spirit of of being able to use the 4-card pool. And
Jeremy,
that's fun.
question for you. As our resident Alice simp,
Okay.
because your daughter's name is Alice, and you love her.
Sure.
What's the best way to castling into something? What's the best card to castling out of that?
What's the best card to castle into something?
Yes. If you could castle one card into another card, what would it be and why?
If I could castle one card into another card, what would it be and why? Well, they have to be matching cost.
Correct.
So
Maybe your favorite?
that's tough. I would imagine. I mean, the easiest castling line right now would be doing something with Predator to castle like a Grand Leon, like get Grand Leon in off of the Predator contracts, which I can cast for free if I'm, with Mastery, and then after Grand Leona's swing, castle it into like a Garion. Like that to me would be like the best line of like castling a Grand Leon into a Garion.
Paul? I'd like to know
what would Alice is castling into?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, God, I have so many fond memories of Alice's castling.
That's what I was about to say. Like
Sacred Beast into another Sacred Beast.
This is a great party question for all your Force Will parties, where you can just ask them. You can get a lot out of somebody's personality by asking them what they would castle into.
I just told you.
Yeah,
castle a Grand Leon into a Garion. So I take you from being damaged for playing 1-drop spells into not being able to play 1-drop spells.
That's just a natural progression. Paul, you haven't fully answered the question. You talked about Sacred Beasts. I appreciate that, but you have to give me something. Give me something tangible here.
Oh, you mean like something more like
what's your way to get that? What's your way to get that big thing on board? And what are you about to castling that into to make your dreams come true?
Oh, easy. I shield flip into a Girion. I swing, and then I Alice's castling into another Girion and swing.
Yo, this guy's based.
Double Gary.
Easy. Not even hard.
Double Gary.
Gary.
Also, seeing as a 1-drop cancel. That's also absurdly expensive,
Gary,
by the way.
quite contrary.
Well,
right.
That is it for tonight. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Everyone in chat. The question is yours to answer. Jeremy, continue.
Okay, cool. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I thank you all so much for being here. It's always kind of an interesting piece on like these, I would say news filled, but also kind of slower weeks to have a conversation here. So it's always nice when the chat is very, very active. Castling into another Athenia. Yeah, that's oof. Right.
Power play.
So it's always nice to be able to have these conversations with people. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like what we did, want to consider supporting the channel, you can click that join button down below. As always, to consider supporting us by joining as a member, get access to all those cool emotes. We're trending upwards, so we might be able to eventually get a new emote unlocked, which would be very, very cool. Tune in this week for the feature match, which will be Almerius Moodstart versus Dry version 2 of 3 that we're going to be putting up on the channel, because we will eventually get the Dry list that we feel confident with. Famine's hard to build right, surprisingly. So we're working on that. So tune in this week to finally see that. And we'll see you here next week. So until next time, this has been myself, DMO73, and I have been joined as always by Mike Rants.
Once again, 2 hot dogs together on a bun does not equal a sandwich.
And Paul Reisman.
But 2 hot dogs and 1 hot dog bun equals a really good trip to the movies.
Facts.
Saying class dismissed.